Okay. Well, I'm really excited for this one. We are now joined by former LSU offensive lineman T. Bob Hebert, a guy who I've hung out with a few times. Once at
Yep.
Bogus, we were the old guys in the room. I'm only 28, but I never felt so old in my life. But he's now joining us here to break down some LSU football. Man, how you doing?
Yo, Nick, what's up, dude? Yeah, I feel you on that old stuff. But I'm 33 in my Jesus year, soon to be father of three. So get a little more on you in terms of the age department. What's going on though, man? I'm feeling good. Excited to talk some LSU. This was some of my favorite film that I have watched out of LSU in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll get right to it. So I'll start off with this. Is this LSU team actually getting better, or did they just get some lucky breaks and some situational moments against Mississippi State?
No. That was not a fluky win. I mean, I want to be painfully clear about that. Certainly them muffing a punt, I mean, sure, you're gonna have breaks go your way, but overall, LSU physically outplayed Mississippi State. Like they beat them up. It was the first time in a long time, probably since Florida last year, where it felt like a team was just kind of giving up at the end. But even the Florida game's a bit, well, no, I guess that's a bit how Florida felt. But like it was because I mean, look, the in that defense, right? You saw them, except for the first drive, really be locked in the entire game, and they seemed to be gaining in confidence as the game went on, and they were critical in that first half to keeping the score relevant so that the offense didn't have to feel too much pressure. And the offense finally then finds a way to break through at the end of the first half. They have a solid third quarter. They wear them down. They wear them down. Then by the fourth quarter, it felt like both sides of the ball had just completely taken over that game. But the other reason why I think they're getting better is because they continue to try these little personnel quirks as the coaching staff learns their players to a further degree, and they're paid huge dividends in this game. I mean, the switching of Jay Ward and Greg Brooks speaks for itself. Jay Ward had one of the most dominant performances that you will see out of a defensive player, and that's not an exaggeration. I mean, he was that juice, making plays all over the field, and then on offense, dude, I came away ecstatic about Emory Jones as your right tackle and Will Campbell as your left tackle as well. I mean, those guys didn't just play well, Nick. Those guys dominated in pass protection. And I get it. I mean, everybody said Mississippi State had a good defensive line. I didn't think they looked particularly good. They're big guys. They're not great pass rushers. Like I can't remember number five's name from Florida State, but I think he's better than anybody State had. But that still doesn't discount that Will Campbell and Emory Jones as true freshmen started in the SEC and I thought really dominated their pass pro matchups and looked like so athletic while doing so. There's just so much potential there. And then you had like Harold Perkins emerge on the defense, who they used him in a bunch of different ways. He was all over the field. So they are getting better. And that's what happens with the football team. Like we can't act like everything you saw in that Florida State game is going to remain true. Because as we said, going to that Florida State team, this is a team kind of defined by the unknown. So the potential for growth there is massive. And I thought you saw it because I wasn't even impressed after Southern. Like I wasn't even feeling good after Southern. And it was some even the changes made after that that really got me so excited this week. So no, you've already seen definite, legitimate improvement.
Okay, so I was gonna save this question for last, but since you brought it up, Sophie's choice.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the better offensive lineman today, Will Campbell or Emory Jones, and who has more potential moving forward?
Hmm. I think Campbell's maybe a bit better today. Then again, he has been repping at this position for way longer, whereas Emory Jones just last week was playing a little guard. I don't know how much tackle he's practiced up to this point. In terms of potential, I mean, it's I don't think that there's just like I could and this you could say this is a cop out, but it is how I feel. I could say Will Campbell and sure, right, but I could also just say Emory Jones. Like they both looked so damn good. And again, it was in how it wasn't just the fact they were winning the battles, it was how they were winning the battles. Like they're both huge, but they both have elite athleticism when it comes to controlling that weight. Like I mean, there were a couple times like they tried to spin on Emory, right? And his repost back up in was just so impressive his recovery was, or a guy's coming from depth and hits with a bull rush, and both of them have this ability to really drop their hips and like stonewall guys. And then Campbell at points was just looking like a straight bully. So I think Campbell's a little better now, but in terms of potential, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. The potential for both feels sky high after this game. And it's not to say they won't have bad games. There's going to be better pass rushers on this schedule. Absolutely. But to do this at 18, when you start to think 2 years down the road what they're going to look like, I mean, the future that's one of the reasons why you're hearing this excitement in my. I was blown away. I mean, because they were so bad. The offensive line was against Florida State, and even when they weren't scoring in the first half this week, they were still winning on the line.
Yeah. We'll get back to the offense in a second, and we will talk about quarterback because that's everyone's favorite position. But let's switch back to the defense. So I heard Gordy Rush. He does like a little film review with Hannegriff every Monday, and he was saying that Matt House pretty much brought out an NFL scheme that you see on Sunday against that air raid offense. So Matt House did that with a secondary that's been switched around, that hasn't played a lot together, with a true freshman linebacker who is talented but still a true freshman. And in week 3 of his first year installing that NFL defense to a bunch of college kids, and it looked that good. Am I prisoner of the moment, or did LSU discover another defensive genius in Matt House?
Well, look, all of this is at least somewhat prisoner of the moment because, of course, it is, right? We are reacting to the moment. We still have a small sample size. And so everything's going to weigh more heavily. So I wouldn't even worry about whether or not you're being prisoner of the moment. What you witnessed was an elite coaching job by Matt House, quite simply. After a game number 1 in which he got out-coached and out-schemed and was Florida State was able to put his players in positions where they kind of lost themselves a bit, to come out and be, like you said, as on the same page. And it's not even just 11 guys. I mean, right now they're basically doing middle linebacker by committee. Mike Jones Jr. is in there. West Weeks is in there. Greg Penn is in there. Harold Perkins is in there. Sometimes Harold Perkins coming off the edge. A lot of times they're giving 4 down, dropping 3 down. Like, it was a master class. And they really confused one of the elite quarterbacks in the country, in my opinion, and Will Rogers. And that's why it felt so bad. And that's why, because like before the game, turns out I'm not an elite coordinator. My idea was kind of what LSU did last year, which was be very bland, very boring, but basically rush 3, count on your athleticism to be able to drop 8 and keep everything underneath you and win those battles. No, Matt House didn't stick to some hard and fast rush 3 rule. He would add guys to the rush. But what he did do, and why Will Rogers wasn't able to beat that rush like he did every other game, is he was confusing Rogers consistently with what the pre-snap read was coverage-wise versus what the actual post-snap coverage ended up being. And by the end of the game, it had gotten so completely out of control. It was like somebody getting into the zone, like a shooter or something, where Rogers and State just couldn't. They just couldn't figure it out anymore. And then also, like, the defense itself played with violence. There were a lot of drops at the end of the game, and in my opinion, it's drops as a result of Jay Ward's hits, Greg Brooks hits. So it was and others, obviously. It was I thought Jaquelin Roy and Mekhi Garner did really well with interior. Mekhi Wingo did really well with interior rush as well, which is so critical. As in Mason Smith, you probably lost the best player on your team, but we kind of forget about Jaquelin Roy, and he was strong. So it was and kind of like you're alluding to there, for it to NFL system, whatever you want to call it, a great coach, especially a great college coach, because in the NFL you just got to know your shit. But a great college coach, one of the core traits you want to have is the ability to communicate complicated and dense amounts of information simply to your players, and to create the illusion of complexity and density, but all your players are on the same page. And there's a bit of magic in that. And I don't always know how that is achieved, but Matt House is achieving that. Dave Aranda used to achieve that. Matt House achieved that against Mississippi State, I should say.
So going back to the offense, I heard you say on Scone and T a couple of weeks ago that Mike Denbrock's offense almost seems a little too reliant on the assumption that you're going to have a dominant offensive line.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember saying that, but
Yeah, for sure. That's what it
what
looked
do you
like after
what
Florida
do you
State.
mean by that?
Just that it like some of the route combinations looked like they were very long developing, right? He's been very upfront about talking about the need to be able to run the ball, like within the offense, like a traditional sort of rushing attack. And it just looked like because if you go back and watch Florida State, especially at the beginning, the ball is really not coming out quickly at all, and the O line's not holding their blocks, and it looked like a bit of a disaster. Against Southern, I saw some really poor blocking at times. That was just completely masked by the fact that your skill positions were just better, but would have cost you in other games. Uh, I think that Denbrock, like House, is learning his team, learning his personnel, and he called a much better game against Mississippi State. And the offensive line played much better. So it's tough to say as well, right? Like maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but something that did seem different is when LSU started to thrive into the first half, beginning of the second half, it was a lot of much more quick hitting stuff. Quick slants, the receivers, little quick outs, little swing passes to the running back, quick first read. Here it is, make the throw and just get some yards, get the ball into the hands of the playmakers type of stuff. And that's the sort of stuff that if your O-line is struggling, well, obviously that's going to go a long way to help. And they also rolled Jaden. It felt like more of this game. So look, everybody has to learn their team and grow. And like I said, man, the changes that they made personnel wise and the changes they made scheme wise both speak to this staff doing that, like really learning this team and how to employ it much better.
So on that, with Jaden Daniels, learning your personnel, it seems pretty obvious to me that Jaden Daniels is not as comfortable with these sort of pro style, long developing passing plays where he kind of like sits into the pocket a little bit longer. Especially you saw that a lot in the first half against Florida State. You saw him, obviously miss some wide open throws, even though he was going through his progression against Mississippi State. Um, I've said before, like that's just not who he is. That's just not who Jaden Daniels is. He's
Yeah.
a really good spread option quarterback. But it's funny because I'm seeing more of that in the first 3 weeks than I ever saw Mike Denbrock's offense at Cincinnati. When I go back and watch his Cincinnati offense, it's way more spread option. It's like an RPO on every single play.
Yeah.
It's a read option on, it seems like, on every single play. It's quicker developing routes on every single play. So I mean, why does, I guess he'll stop doing that, but why is he even trying to sort of fit a square peg into a round hole at this point if that's not even his offense to begin with?
Well, if I had to guess, I'm guessing a lot of his, and I don't know, it's again sample size issue here, right? This offense, like I'd be interested because I haven't really gone back and watched Cincinnati. I would wonder if you would compare the second half of Mississippi State to Cincinnati, if it would look similar, because it does feel like a lot of these concepts are starting to pop up more. If I had to guess, maybe why I'd feel a bit different. I mean, look, your best personnel group is your wide receiver group, and so maybe you want to give them the chance to hit more home runs or take advantage of them more, and so you're trying things that maybe you weren't doing at Cincinnati. I don't know, but on the Jaden Daniels front, I do think that uh yes, like is he going to pass up a couple throws, that he could have hit? Absolutely. And sometimes it'll be a bad decision. He'll go to run and nothing good will happen out of it, right? But in the context of who this team is, with an O-line that we've seen one bad game and one good game out of, so, objectively, we still can't sit here and say it's a really good O-line, even though I loved what I saw this last game. But with the context of who this team is, you have to accept that the net positives of Jaden Daniels vastly outweigh the net negatives. Even if it's not perfect quarterback play, right? Like, yeah, he's going to miss some routes. And he even goes through, like, he hit a weird streak this last game, right? Where he missed the 2 easy throws to Cole Taylor, then he missed a wide open touchdown in the back of the end zone. And that sucks. But what doesn't suck is when he finds a way to score a touchdown on 3rd and goal from the 7 when you have to have it. What doesn't suck is him on 4th and 3 after missing 2 throws up the sidelines saying, fuck it, I can make this throw, and trusting Malik Neighbors and get, like, The dude is a gamer, and he's been at his best when the game is on the line. And even when it's not on the line, his running, while it's going to, some people just be kind of inherently frustrated by it. His running has been way more of a positive than it is a negative. And don't discount this. The ability to run that he has even has interesting ancillary effects. Like when I watched that state tape, I talk about how good the tackles were. They didn't get hit with a ton of crazy pass rush moves. And partially that's because Mississippi State is trying as hard as they can to stay disciplined in their rush lanes so that they don't allow Jaden Daniels to get outside the pocket. So it's like when you have two young tackles forcing defensive ends to try to rush down the middle and stay disciplined like that, well, that helps out immensely. So like within the context of this team, Jaden Daniels, regardless of how we evaluate his play, he represents way more good than bad, in my opinion.
So my only concern to that is, and then we'll move on to the last question. My only concern is that that's just not sustainable for him to get hit that much. Like that's just not.
But that's where you're in an interesting position where, and this is going to sound pretty crass, but it is kind of the reality of college football. You need to win. Daniels is the best path to winning. Daniels himself seems on board with kind of the same mindset, right? It's his last year. He knows that. You know that. He definitely doesn't want to get hurt, but he also wants to put his best foot forward for the NFL. LSU wants to win games. So if he wants to go for it like that, both parties kind of tacitly agree. I mean, maybe at times you tell him he could slide here or there and to be a little judicious but if he wants to be the throws body across the line guy, I think you allow it. Because again, to be very kind of cynical or just, very bottom line, let's forget about human beings about this whole thing. If he were to get hurt, it's not ideal for winning, but then you do work in a quarterback that maybe does factor into your future in Garrett Nussmeier. And so there's positives there as well. So it is one of the rare. So it's not like 2019 with LSU where if Joe Burrow would have gotten hurt, you would have been fucked because like Miles Brennan was secretly hurt as well. That scenario, which knock on wood, hope to God does not come to pass. It's not a disaster.
Yeah, I guess that's my only fear is like, well, then Nussmeier goes out there and it is what. But then again, at the same time, you're like, well, it's year one, so you're preparing for your future. But it works out either way how it'll play out. But okay, last question. Special team struggles. My theory is that the lack of depth on this team is the reason why special teams is ultimately kind of going through this tough transition.
Yeah.
Is that a good
no, I mean, I kind of, maybe it was your Twitter that I saw that on the other day. I can't remember. I saw that somewhere and I was like, yeah. Like, when you don't have a few years to really build out the talent on that roster, like the most elite special teams units are generally the ones that are, unless you have like a guy like, like a Shane Beamer or somebody who's kind of cut their teeth in that. And so they really emphasize it. You're right. A lot of times those elite special teams are the ones who just have like leftover 4-stars and like all these like just physical freaks that can, on special teams have relatively little to think about mentally and just go be a freak. And I don't know, like you said, LSU's roster's there right now, but that even gets weird because like some of the struggles are so basic that it's just a bit confusing, right? Like if you're catching punts, don't go put your heels past 10-yard line. If you're on the wing blocking for field goal, you always have to take care of the inside first and step down. It's just
See, my thing is though,
it's an odd combination. And maybe I guess if you're saying, well, if you build up the roster more, then you have players that wouldn't make those mistakes. And it's the classic weird thing of where do you separate coaching from a player just having like a brain fart and messing up? And I don't know. It's been bad. It got a bit better. Like the thing is, okay, answer me this. Have the special teams made the same mistake twice? In game one, yes, every single field goal was awfully blocked, but the field goals have been solid since. The muff punts, they change returners. And now we got to see, how does Clayton do here? Will he catch a ball inside the 10 again? Will he dive on a ball he shouldn't dive on? Like, I don't care if you make the mistake once. Let's learn. Do you make the mistake again? That's when I'll start to get upset.
Yeah. And my whole thing is my rule of thumb, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but like Brian Polian was a really good special teams coach at Notre Dame. If you look up the stats, like they broke some school.
Yeah, I
And
did not know that.
that coaches don't become bad. Good coaches don't become bad overnight like that. It's usually happens slowly over years. So that's why I'm a little perplexed. But
Well, I mean, look, you are right. Okay, I do agree with everything that you just said. The problem is people are just going to judge objective results. And so if your phase of the game that you coach is doing bad, sure, maybe like, I'm sure if we were to sit down and talk about it and really get Brian Poling to be like completely honest, like off the record, he would probably have perfectly reasonable explanations for why this or this or this happened, right? But it is what it is. Football's meritocracy, which is why now it's his job to say, okay, like now you see Nick Storrs as the wing on field goal, right? So it's like, okay, who can do this job? You see Covington returning kicks, and they're going to continue to try to tinker and fix the same way that the other two sides of the ball are. I mean, kind of lost in this all is David Ramos has been really good, and that was like a huge point of concern coming into the year. So yeah, I don't know. It's probably not as dire as we make it out to be sometimes.
yeah, we have to remind ourselves that it is still only week 3 in the first year of Brian Kelly. T, I really appreciate you doing this, man.
Hell yeah, Nick.
This was a lot of fun, and you got Scone and T tonight. Obviously, more people are gonna listen to that than my little old show. But nonetheless, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with me and talk some football.
Hell yeah, Nick. No problem, man. Take it easy, brother.
All right, you too, bro.
Thanks for listening to Out of My League. If you like what you heard, be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
Or follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok in the description link below.